Mai, haere mai. Morena everyone. Welcome to the September Council meeting, the last one for the triennium. We have health and safety. We have some visitors here. Kia ora. So we'll just go through a bit of health and safety. If the fire alarm goes off, please exit down the stairwell to the assembly point, which is the visitor car park. Earthquakes, drop, cover and hold. Visitors, please make sure that you have signed in at the reception and that you sign out when you leave and that you are wearing your name sticker. The toilets are on the opposite side of the stairwell, and please adhere to the recommended COVID alert guidance that applies. Okay, so we will start today with our opening karakia. We could all be outstanding, please. And Marty, if you could lead us off, thank you.
Tēnei au, tēnei mātou, e kaikaunihira, e kāwenga I ngā whakapaunga, I ngā tikanga, ki uta, ki tai, ki rewa ai ngā iwi katoa o te tautau. Haumi e, hui e, tai e.
If we could all please now take a minute's silence to mark the death of Her Majesty the Queen, and also recent Northland rangatira who have also passed. Thank you. Thank you. A huge legacy, and long live the King. So we will start with apologies, and I don't think there are any apologies. I haven't received any. No. So we'll move on to item 4, which is a declaration of conflicts of interest, which we can take as we go, unless there's any at the start. No. All right, moving on to item 5, which is council minutes and action sheets. So 5.1, which is on page 16, if we could have a mover and seconder. Thank you, Rick. Seconded, Jack. Any matters arising? No. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. 5.2, receipt of the action sheet, page 16. If I could have a mover and seconder, please. Thank you, Colin. Seconded, Amy. Any matters arising? No. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 6, financial report. So we've got the financial report to the 31st of August 2022. 6.1, could I have a move and seconded, please? Thank you, Rick and Joss. Seconded. Have we got an update? Is there an update, Malcolm?
I think this was updated too.
Oh, it was. Yep, so we're fully up to date.
Yeah, Chair, so if I could just comment, this is a slightly different report to the report that was circulated with the draft agenda. As we received the final report from our investment managed funds, and the report has been updated to reflect the changes that were to the managed funds for August.
Thank you. Bruce, did you have any comments that you wanted to make?
Thanks, Chair. I think the only comment I would make is,
have you got a microphone? Sorry. Sorry, Bruce.
I think the only comment I would make is that we do have around about $600,000 in favourable variances on salaries, but I think that's reflective of the start of the year, and also you'll notice the high turnover currently running at 18%. So that's the only thing I'd like to point out in the report. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. Yes, it is certainly higher than what we would like and what we're used to. However, markedly lower than other councils around the country. So open it up for questions and comments from any councillors. Right. I think going forward, we can certainly rest easy that we're in a very good financial position. And all credit to Malcolm and the staff for that. Thank you. Okay, so all those in favour of receiving the financial report?
Aye.
Against? carried. So 6.2, adoption of the 2022 annual report. Could I, on page 21, could I have a mover? Yep. If councillors are happy, we'll do all 5 together.
Yep.
Yep, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Seconder, thank you, Joss. Peter, can I hand over to you? Thank you, Peter. You need a microphone. Thank you, Peter Gulliver, who's carried out the audit from Deloitte for NRC for the annual report. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Penny. Kia ora, and good morning, everybody. If I could please turn you to the status page of the audit, which is on, I think, 186 of the agenda papers. And I'll just move through our report from there. So just in terms of where we are, so obviously in really good shape, being in a position to sign off the annual report today, which is approximately a month ahead of where we've been in previous years. The only things that are left to do are just the normal sort of formalities around approving an annual report. So there's the closing out of the subsequent event inquiries covering the period from balance date through till today, which we've done this morning, thanks to Simon. There's the receipt of the management representation letters, which will follow at the end of this meeting. And then once council has adopted the financial statements and annual report, then we can provide our audit report. And there is a draft of that circulating as well. So as I say, we're in very good shape. Just moving through to page 188 of your papers, this is a table effectively giving a status, if you like, of the areas where we applied most focus during the audit. So these areas are consistent with the areas that we highlighted during the planning part of the audit. And just running quickly through in terms of the rationale. So asset valuations is always a key area. There's a number of assets on council's balance sheet which are valued at fair value, and there's a number of judgments which go into that. So that's an area of focus. The governance and valuation of your investment assets is becoming an even more significant part of council's balance sheet in the last few years. So again, another important area of focus. The validity of fees and charges revenue is an area we also focus on in terms of the recognition policy there. We look at management's ability to override controls, which is important in the context of organisations without huge finance teams and the ability to completely segregate duties. We look at legislative compliance, particularly around rates revenue. It's a potentially tricky area to navigate, so need some focus there. And then the last one is a new one for the year, and it's the investment in subsidiaries and associate, and it really reflects the change in status of Northland Inc. from a subsidiary entity into an associate for the year. So like I will go through the comments on each of these areas, but please just stop me if there's any questions along the way. So the first area, the asset valuations. So this incorporates your infrastructure asset portfolio, council's own land and buildings, investment properties, emissions trading units, which is sort of more of an intangible asset, I guess, and then the forestry asset. And again, consistent with previous years, we've seen uplifts in the valuation of these assets. The council's owned land and buildings increased by approximately 4 million, reflecting, of course, the new property that was constructed in Dargaville, the Council Services Centre, which has come online near the end of the year. Investment properties have increased by 7.5 million, again, driven by firming investment metrics around the cap rates. The infrastructure assets were uplifted by approximately 2.7, and just to note, that wasn't a formal valuation, but the result of a desktop valuation by the valuer, and that lift reflects the increase in construction costs which we've been observing over the last 2 years. So that'll be tidied up with a full valuation next year. And there are a couple of sizable investment property disposals during the year too. So the Kensington transaction was settled in this financial year, and there are a couple of properties in Union Street as well for a sizable amount. And then we had a reasonable amount of capex to look at during the year as well. So the aforementioned property in Dargaville, there was capex there. We had the continuing expenditure on the flood protection assets in line with what was signalled in the long-term plan. And then there was the development at Station Road in Ruakaka, which is the council's contribution to Niwa's Kingfish facility. So there was a fair bit going on in the current year, but we're pretty comfortable those assets are all recognised at the appropriate values at year end. Moving through to the governance and valuation of investment assets. So as I signalled or stated at the start, this is an increasingly important part of council's balance sheet. During the year, we saw some funds, recycled into these investment assets. And if you look at the return history over the past few years, those asset has grown significantly in value. So sort of standing back, we've got really two observations, I guess, to leave you with in relation to that asset. And one just, I suppose, reflects the fact that it is an increasingly important part of council's balance sheet, and the fact that the markets have obviously, I suppose, reached a different dynamic to where they've been in the past. And I should also acknowledge that from our perspective, the governance procedures around these assets are excellent. You've got a SIPO document which dictates where to invest and in what proportions. It's reviewed each year. There's appropriate input into that, and you have regular reporting against it. So we're very comfortable with that governance aspect. What we're suggesting is maybe the time is right to take perhaps a bit more of a belts and braces approach to getting a third-party view. Like my expectation is that third-party view would largely validate what you're doing, but just because of the size of the asset, and I say the increasing importance on council's balance sheet, our perspective is it might be time to just perhaps maybe use one of your internal audit projects for the year just to get another view and to make sure that you're comfortable with the overall construct of that investment asset. So that was our first suggestion. And then the second point reflects a change that was made to the SIPO in the current year, or the start of the current year, where, and I think we had this discussion at the Audit and Risk Subcommittee meeting last year, where we were suggesting that the fund managers, so those that are responsible for placing the investments, should be providing you with reports on their internal control environments. And some of the background to that, perhaps for the councillors that weren't part of that meeting, is that it can be a tricky area to validate, because essentially we're receiving the confirmation of value directly from the fund's managers, but you can't really dig too far below that because some of the funds are invested in other funds, so there's a limit to sort of how far you can reach in. So what is sort of common practice in our industry is to look at some of the other controls and processes, and it's become increasingly important over recent years for these fund managers to get a third party in to validate their own internal control environments, as well as to receive their own external audits, which incorporates the fund. So we sort of look to those three aspects, almost like three legs of a stool. There's the confirmation of value, there's the internal control aspect, and then there's the statutory audit. And we just noticed there were, for the current year, there were 6 funds, I think, that didn't have that internal control report. And whilst it's not necessarily the end of the world, we wouldn't want to see you entering into too many investments with managers that didn't have that type of report. And I guess because it's also a requirement of the SIPO, we raised it as something to consider. And you'll see management's provided a response to that as well. So those are, I guess, our two sort of thoughts and observations on those investment fund assets. And then look, we can probably move through the rest of it relatively quickly because we didn't have any findings in relation to the validity of the fees and charges revenues, nor with management's or the risk of management overriding controls. And then with the investments in subsidiaries and associates, as I noted, Northland Inc.'s status has changed this year, although it's a relatively immaterial effect on council's balance sheet. And then if I move through to page 193, so look, the rest of these areas of focus are areas that were just sort of common in audits that we undertake on behalf of the OAG, Office of the Auditor General. So we're looking for evidence of I guess, probity of expenditure. We undertake a number of samples around credit card and fuel cards and the like to do some checking there. We're looking at your processes around conflicts of interest. So Penny just noting the call out you made at the start of the meeting, that's part of the procedure that we look for. We also look for evidence of related party transactions. We look at the financial prudence measures, which are, of course, front and centre of in the annual report, and which Stuart commented on in his report as well. We undertake some procedures in relation to fraud, and you'll, of course, all been part of the confirmation that we were looking for there, and as well as looking at legislative compliance more generally, other than just the rate side. Page 195 is just more detail on that comment I made around council SIPO and the internal control reports, and you can see management's response to that. And then 196, pleasingly, we're reaching this point in terms of approving the annual report with no unadjusted differences from an audit point of view, nor any disclosures which we consider have been omitted. So again, annual report from our perspective is in very good shape. So I will perhaps pause there and see if there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Peter. And I would like to just extend our thanks, as I know this is the last NRC audit that you'll be taking part in, as it's the time to have someone different come along within Deloitte. But do certainly appreciate all the time and expertise added to this process, the very productive way that you've worked with our staff and vice versa. And it's just gone out of my head, but that, yeah, so thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Are there any direct questions about the Deloitte's report?
Yes, through the chair, just one around the the audit findings in terms of our investment assets. What degree of urgency do you think there is around that third party review of the SIPO, and sort of, because what I'm hearing is, you just you're indicating there might be a more heightened level of risk in the current global financial setting. So just wondering, because we're transitioning into a new council, is that something that perhaps we could delegate to our senior staff or our CEO to crack on with, so that information for the internal audits available early on in triennium?
Look, I don't see it as particularly urgent. As I say, I think the governance processes around those investment assets is very good. You've got the right expertise, you've got very good reporting and a very solid SIPO. So not urgent, but I think mildly important, and particularly with a new council coming on board. So my thinking was, you do have a budget for internal audit reviews in any case on an annual basis. So maybe at some point you allocate one of those to get a suitably qualified third party and to have a look. So yeah, I would sort of leave that to the next council and management. But yeah, I hope that answers the question.
What I was going to say was thank you very much for bringing the audit forward, but also for getting it done this year. There's many other councils that have heard of that haven't had that luxury, so thank you very much, appreciate it. Rick, you had a question? Then
yeah, no, it's just awesome being one of the heads too. Right, so I'll back up what the chair said. Look, so you were happy with the management's response on pages 15 of your report on 95. So that would answer that question better.
Yeah, that point there, Rick, is actually related to the internal audit.
Yeah.
Sorry, the internal control aspects of the fund managers. Yeah. So really just raising that so that management can keep an eye on it in conjunction with Ericsson's. I think.
So you're happy with the response?
I'm happy with the response. Yeah.
Because obviously, if you look at the one, for instance, that's mentioned Zespri, it was a sort of one-off, and it was at the time, and it would be another year before something like that. I'm just covering that these things do happen, so that would be normal practice. What's happening, isn't it?
Yeah, as long as council's aware of it, approving those transactions as you go, it's fine.
We're definitely very aware of them, and we've discussed them, and it is coming up the next property investment and profit. So thanks.
Malcolm.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add my thanks to yours, to Peter personally, for everything he's done during his term as the auditor for the last 6 years, acknowledging that he's stepping down, and we'll continue our relationship with Deloitte with someone new. But Peter, I'd really like to thank you, because you brought a new culture and way of looking at the audit. You've truly added value which was one of the things that we asked for when we appointed Deloitte's originally, and you've delivered in that in spades. And so the auditors has gone from essentially a box ticking exercise to one that actually adds value to the organization and helps us with our journey of improvement every year when you and your team come in. So my personal thanks to you for that, and I'm sure I extend that on behalf of the whole finance team as well.
Well said, well said.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Malcolm.
Yeah, just as outgoing chair of audit and risk, and I just want to echo some sentiments of Malcolm and Peter. It's been great working with you, Peter, and Deloitte, and yeah, the rapport that you've had with our senior management and the financial team has been great. You've all just been a phone call away and been very obliging. So I, as a chair,
Thank you, Colin.
Sorry, any last comment from you on the audit? Sorry, Peter, did you have a last?
I was just going to also ask if I could record my thanks to Malcolm, Bruce, Simon, and the wider finance team. Look, those comments are, yeah, they mean a lot to me. Thank you very much for making them. But look, we're only as good as the client we work with. And look, from my perspective, and Stuart covered it in his report as well, the finance team here is a very classy finance team. They deliver, on time, they deliver high quality material, and that just makes our job, that much easier, which is why we can sit here today, a month ahead of schedule. So a lot of the credit actually needs to go to Simon and his team. So Simon and Bruce, thank you very much.
We'll just move on now to comments or questions on the actual annual report. And I just want to start by saying that I think we've had a very productive year. And you'll see in the report that it's robust and it's transparent. And thank you, Stuart, for your comments. Very spot on, as normal. So certainly, yeah, gratitude and compliments, as Peter said, to Malcolm, Bruce, and the whole team, finance team, as well as the rest of the organisation. We have, it's such a well-oiled machine. And as you said this morning, Marty, it's a jigsaw, but all the pieces are in place and in the right place. So I think just to say to anyone listening out there on live stream as ratepayers and constituents that you're in good hands. There is very prudent and thorough process in place for NRC, and you should be very, very secure in moving forward. I have no questions on the annual report. Are there any questions or comments from councillors? And I'll go to you, Malcolm. No?
Yep.
Oh.
No, as chair, I just want to say thanks again to the team and also Peter and also Stuart. I love your reports. They are always straight to the point. So thanks for that, Stuart. And yes, it is. In fact, this year that it is a good return. And also, if it's good reading the annual report. Like, it's interesting, it's enjoyable. So I encourage anybody, even if you don't like figures, still to have a read of it because it's really interesting and valuable, and it shows what's happening. It's a good reflection on the past couple of years, and it's been a horrible time, but it's a good reflection and it's a positive reflection. So I encourage people to have a read.
Yeah, it's certainly not all facts and figures. I was at Ricketts.
No, it's
got
not
good
all facts and
commentary at the
figures.
start. Yeah. Malcolm, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make note and point councillors to page 91, which is our what I call a profit and loss statement, which is not quite the income and expenditure statement, but and particularly just note what we need to acknowledge that we came up a little bit short in terms of our KPIs this year, but at the same time we plan to deliver an additional $11 million worth of services to the community, and we managed to achieve $8 million worth of incremental services over and above what we delivered last year. And I just want to compliment and thank my team for that, because to actually lift our service delivery, given the year that we've had with all the challenges we've had, has taken an exceptional performance and commitment by the team across the whole organization. So just wanted to put those few areas where we came up a little bit short in context.
Thank you, Malcolm. Good point. Nothing further? Okay, so we will put those recommendations to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. So we can move on to item 7, the decision-making matters. 7.1, change to the start date for incoming chief executive. We did realise that we were 2 days or a weekend short there between the handovers, so this is just an admin matter. Move and seconder. Thank you, Justin. Seconded, Marty. Any comments, questions? All those in favour?
I'll have to take another long weekend, don't we?
Yeah, it's a 24/7 job though. So, okay, 7.2, Tangata Whenua Water Advisory Group replacement members on page 204. Are there movers and seconders? Kia ora, Peter.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks. See you later.
Sorry, Joss and Amy. Moved and second. Any questions, comments?
Yeah. Sure, will be great.
No? Welcome to those new members. All those in favour? Against? Carried. 7.3, Makaranga Maori Freshwater Framework, page 207. So this has been through and been endorsed by TTMAC. Move and seconder, please. Marty and Justin, thank you. I'll look left next time. Any questions, comments?
Oh, it's good to see that there's 2E, or 2D, there is the capacity for some of that fund to go on the ground, restoration activities.
And also good to see Tyke here, in action.
Yes. Thank you, Marty. Okay, all those in favour? Against? Carried. 7.4, delegations to decisions for resolving appeals on the proposed regional plan for Northland. So this is just to cover the interim period between now and official when the new council starts. Left, move and seconder. Thank you, Colin and Jack. And Ben, I believe you're in the hot seat there. Oh no, Jono, sorry. Yeah. Okay, all those, any comments, questions? Yes, Joss.
Yeah, if I could make just one brief comment. It's really just to note the sort of degree to which the whole process has gone in terms of the proposed regional plan, and the phenomenal job that the team has been doing in terms of the environment court process and the number that have settled outside of the court through the mediation process. It's a huge amount of additional work for our staff, this whole process of going through and finally getting this to resolution. And we're not too far off. I mean, there's a few gnarly, sticky ones at the end, which was always going to be the case. But yeah, I really just want to take the opportunity, having been chair of planning and reg and also sat as a commissioner on that plan, to just acknowledge the whole team and the phenomenal amount of work that has been done. I know there's a lot of work ahead in terms of the freshwater plan change that's coming up for the next term. And it will be another significant chunk of work for the council, but this has really made some significant changes to the way that our rule framework is, and the team has done a phenomenal job. So just thank you very much from me for everyone's efforts over the years that it's taken to finally get us to this point. And yeah, there's still a little way to go. I would have loved to have been able to say it was ticked off before I finished, but at the end of the day, it has made huge progress, and we are getting there. So thank you very much, team.
Thank you, Joss, and also want to acknowledge the part that you've played in that whole regional plan process. Like you said, you were a commissioner, and it's 6 years or 5?
Yeah, and I was working as staff on the prep of it beforehand, so it's been a long road.
Yeah, no, certainly your expertise has added to the flow, and fingers crossed we get there by the end of the year. You never know. We'll be optimistic. Okay, nothing further. All those in favour? 7.4 against, carried. Okay, 7.5. Welcome, Tony. Welcome back. Tony, you started this whole process once the it was from the long-term plan, wasn't it? When you were still a staff member, and you have very generously stayed on board with it. So welcome and look forward to hearing.
Morena koutou. Oh, thanks, Chair. So just slightly different order, what Christine said. I thought if we could do the agenda item and then give the short presentation on one of the currently funded projects.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So we've got 5 recommendations there. I would like to take them separately if we can. So recommendation 1 is to receive the report. I've moved it. Thank you, Jack. Seconded, Amy. But if you could stay there, Tony, because there may be some questions. All those in favour? Against, carried. Recommendation 2, that council approves the Water Resilience Fund grant to Te Roroa Development Group up to 150,000 in 2022-23 for Kaihuwai Inu Pai. You're moving? Yep, seconded. Is there a seconded? Joss, thank you. Any questions, comments? Yes, Marty.
I've got a concern. I really approve of the project, and I like the way that it's being rolled out. But I just want to really put a spotlight on this allocation here. Just the cost per person. You know, it's got to be a little bit of cost benefit coming out of it. That's going to be better than any other way of achieving the objective of resilience. But there's $150,000 to 7 homes, which works out at what, about 21,500 per home. And I'm presently guttering a house, and I just see that on a per house basis, it sounds to me very expensive. Anybody else on the outside would be looking at it with those eyes as well. You see further down, the other allocations might be accorded to a 1/7 of the amount per home. So I'd just like some explanation, I suppose, of the oversight of it, but just why it should be costing so much more per dwelling.
Well, really, that's up to the project providers to put that to put their proposals up and then implement them. And it's really the way the project's structured and the cost of everything they're putting into each property. And yes, this is at the top end, and that's because of the amount that's going in to each property and the way it's being done. It's partly due to this being a project that Kaipara District has had a lot of input into. So there's probably a higher level of needing to fund compliance related issues. That's the way they've chose to do it, because this is replacing what was an informal raw water supply off a Kaipara District line, and they've had to stop that because it doesn't comply. And this is the project that they've worked up with Te Roroa to provide water to this community and these people and solve that problem.
And the process is that there's a committee that sits above, say, the likes of Te Roroa and decides where the money is best spent, isn't it?
Well, I mean, as it says, it is a priority for Te Roroa, and it is a proposal by Te Roroa Development Group.
I suppose, can I rephrase it there? One thing is, one is of oversight, but 2 as to whether they're getting best bang for buck themselves. As to if it's, I mean, I could put 2 tanks and guttering in my house for $14,000 per home. and that's with 2 tanks. So that would give me fully resilient. So I wonder if we're setting up infrastructure at great cost, and liken it to a lot of the infrastructure we put up that is far too expensive, that could be done in a cheaper way. So I wonder if there's oversight so that that could be looked at.
Yeah, I think I was talking about the Te Tokoro Water Resilience Working Group that makes these recommendations to council. Yeah.
Yep.
So that it's been through that process.
So Chair, I think.
The operations guy. So I'll talk about it in operations terms. I think one of the big things is that it might look like 7 houses, but there is a lot more houses on that line. What had happened was that they established a puna, a spring, and then they put some tanks in there. And since then, I would say there'd be about 20 houses on that line, 5 houses, and it's still growing. And now that we've put that water infrastructure in, it's probably going to grow more as well. Yeah. And the other thing with the 7, I think it's actually around 12, but what we've been doing is we've been trying to get the best bang for buck by doing deals with a water tank company who will provide us with a one-stop deal. So simplicity of supply and demand with the tanks are green, the 30,000 litres, we get a pump, we get a filter system, but they don't necessarily have to go into that one house. So we can hold them at the trust, and that provides us with the ability and flexibility to be able to supply other houses with that. So your project are not affordable one. That's it. I would say that. Yeah, it is.
So, Chair, what I would say with this is that there is quite a bit of detail in these projects and why the costs look like they are. If one of the things around this is if NRC was to get too prescriptive with the detail around what needs to go in and what for each project, I think that would be a fairly quick way of grinding the whole thing to a halt and killing it. And the concept of this is to grant fund community-based providers to do this and solve these problems.
Yeah, so we're enabling as opposed
Yes.
to.
Indeed.
The comment I want to make is, to me, this process is so wonderful in that, we've seen the council operate, in a high trust model with Māori providers to deliver the outcomes that they know. They're the ones working with their whānau. So, our role has been to get together the pūtea together, and we've got to have that high trust model and leave it up to Tony and his team to work with those providers. We've got to allow them that freedom and have that trust with that capability to grow, and sort of stay out of the weeds.
Yeah, and it's
Yes, but if you see
hang
a
on,
ball tire.
Marty.
Yep.
It's a community fund, and it just happens that Maori are the benefactors at this stage. So, did you have something else, Marty?
Well, if you see a ball tire on a truck, then you just draw it to your attention. There's some things you just let go through, and there'd be everyone so far has been absolutely green light. But if you see something that just brings to your attention, there's something not quite right here. Perhaps it can be done better, or it's that you can bring it to attention and reflect on it as we're doing now. And if the answers can come out quite clearly, then that's great.
Thank you, Marty.
I don't think we should just say yes to it.
Yep, I'm comfortable that the Te Tokoro Water Resilience Group working group has done their job here. Are there any further comments from councillors? Otherwise, we'll put this one to the vote. Recommendation
2.
2. Anyone against? Marty, did you want that recorded?
No, that's right.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on to the next one, which is number 3. Mover Justin, seconder Marty, thank you. Any comments?
Yeah, just a comment. I've worked with the some of the leaders within the community that have put forward this proposal. And it really is truly grassroots. I mean, this is going right down to the micro community level, like below upwards, you know, clusters of whānau. So from the feedback I've got, you know, they're feeling hugely empowered just by the fact that they've been able to submit an application and work with Tony and the resiliency team. So yeah,
Thanks, Justin.
getting really good feedback.
I did mean to go to you first, Tony. Did you have any comments you wanted to make on this one?
No, I
No.
support
What Justin said?
councillors' view on it.
Anything further from councillors? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Recommendation 4, mover and seconder, please. Jack and Rick, thank you. Now, this one, Tony, did you want to speak first to it? I remember.
So the Te Tautanga Te Mahi Kaha Trust project is basically continuing from a current funded project, which Mona's going to talk about. Shall I get him to talk about that now?
That would be fine.
It's on there, and based on the momentum that has been built around that project and extending it to other communities that desperately need some water infrastructure.
My apologies. I was in the army for 38 years and I've got one dead beer and I picked up, I was thinking, oh,
You're right.
where did that number come from? And then I was sort of doing a bit of a shuffle there. You know, tātou so just thank you for the support that we have had with the resilience project. So from our point of view, it's a very simple process. We work on receipt in, receipt out. We work on one vendor. We have a working relationship with them because you can work up to 6 months, wait for up to 6 months to get water tanks. So we're able to secure 8 tanks per month. That doesn't always mean that we deliver 8 tanks per month because the time taken up is time building relationships with the people to understand what their needs are rather than what their wants are. So it's a hand up, not a hand out. And with a lot of the stuff that we're doing, we're looking for some sort of resilience within there, even if that resilience is built into the relationships and the planning. So rather than me go out and say this house, this house, and this house, what we do is we put that over to the community leaders. They do the selection. We work deals with them to be able to say, like, can you put in the pad, or can you put in the road to it, or something like that. So at the moment, we have delivered 18 tanks in total. We're looking at a situation where we can put in tanks that will benefit a whole community rather than individual houses. That's not always easy to find, but there is a number of those out in the Hokianga that we're actually some of our what we would do is we put X amount of tanks at a head of a spring, build that water pressure up and then push it down into the community. So that's a sort of example. I think one of the key things that helps us with the council being able to deliver is the flexibility that we've been given. So the money stays with BDO until we need it, and then we use that. Kind of when the people who are getting those tanks sort out their act and get a plan together so that I can then work on it. And it's really about building relationships. I think some of the stuff that we've got out of it is trust would be a big thing, trust in the council. And I think that goes a long way to providing examples towards partnership into the future.
future. So, yeah.
Thank you very much for that. That was very helpful, and thank you too to you and your team, because I'm sure there's a lot of volunteer hours that are going into that, and makes all the difference. That relationship building is mint. Yeah, I do see that it moves into the 2023-24 year. Tony, can you make some comments on that, please?
Yep, sure. So I think this was the plan all along, to make these 2 years allocations together. One, we're already partway through this year, so get that done. But the experience of the last 2 years is that if we don't make the decisions ahead, it does tend to run into the beginning of the financial year, which means that people don't know whether they're going to get their funding to go or not. And also there's quite a bit of lead in to be able to do this, in terms of for the providers to get set up and get organised with contractors, and then the wait for delivery of materials. And also a couple of these are multi-year projects, so it's good for helps providers and they're set up to know that they've got the funding for the second part, or to keep the project going. We don't have a big queue of waiting projects at the moment. Deliberately tried not to have a big queue, but we've got, if you like, a small queue, and having multi-year projects does allow a bit of flexibility. So should one run into trouble or not proceed, you can move around, and stuff will still get done. I think there's a risk if you leave it to just year by year and only having the exact projects for the allocations, the risk of something not happening, and then you just get less done.
Thank you. You take your point with lead-in times and that security. So I've got Justin, then Jack, and then Ray.
Mihi ana kia koe mato hone, moto manakitanga, ki ngā hapuri whānui o kai kohe me waima me tautoro. Tēnā koe. I work alongside Hone at the Te Kotahitanga Trust, and I'm sure I hope you all remember his face for standing up, receiving the Supreme Award for the Environmental Award. So another outstanding bit of work, Hone, for the Trust, and kia kaha.
Jack.
I'll just have a brief question for you, Tony. I was under obviously misapprehension that all these schemes were root water tanks only. Is there a mix of bores and springs as well as root water?
Mostly they are. There's a couple. So in the project that's currently funded that Bono's working on, part of that was putting the tanks at the spring end rather than at the house end, or even both, just because they happen to have a good spring supply. And a couple of the bits of the Whangaroa project had some existing small group water supplies that some of the funding was used to fix them up, but mostly individual houses. But yes, there's some small clusters as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, I trust that you and your committee are assessing the risks to those other supplies, like bores or springs, that might dry up, whereas it's always going to be falling out of the sky. So
yeah, I mean, pretty much they all have. There's tanks in all of these projects, okay, because storing the water is one of the main risk managers in this whole thing.
Thank you.
Thanks. Right.
I just want to back the only talked about the trust the community start with council, but we've also got the trust. I personally have trust in you guys, and Tony's been involved from the beginning, and I just think he needs that flexibility. Talked about going to next year's funding, it was understandable. He needs to have that flexibility, and really our job's done. In the fact that we approved it, I I feel, and we have the trust in you guys to deliver, and you're delivering. So I just can't see any problem with it. I mean, I see, I was happy to take all 5 recommendations. Got complete faith in you guys.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, I think we're ready to take a vote now on recommendation 4. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. So I've just got one more to go, and that is moved by Rick, seconded by Marty. Thank you. Any comments or questions? I think my question was answered in the last under recommendation 4 as to why it was going into 23-24, and I do apologise I wasn't at the workshop on this particular one.
Just a comment, not particularly on this one, but I would have been happy to have had 3, 4, and 5 altogether. It was just we look at our annual reports and we have audits of it, and we have comments and questions made of it, which is why I brought up the first one, was because it just seems I need some questioning. But I'm very happy with the process and the results of it. So that's what I'm happy to see.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, nothing further. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Congratulations and well done. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ryan.
Oh, that was 7.5. So we're on to 7.6, electric car charging expansion and vehicle purchasing policy, page 223.
Only going to move it if Joe's back and cruising around.
So we wait yet, I think, before we get back. So we have 5 recommendations there. Is that right? Yep.
I'm happy to move those.
All together, moved Rick, seconded Justin. Thank you. Phil, did you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, briefly, in terms of the purchasing policy, we've got one for chair and chief executive. As it happens, so is the government. So we essentially want to align the chair's one with the remuneration authority. Now, the remuneration authority doesn't do chief executives because their agreements are done by contract, as you'd expect. But we see some wisdom in pinning the value of the chief executive's car to the chair's car. A couple of reasons for that we already do. Second one is that the remuneration authority incentivises the chair to go electric, and I think this council would like to do the same when it comes to the chief executive. Certainly has historically, and so our recommendation is simply just to take up the remuneration authority's guidance. So that's the first. But the second one is the electric vehicle and hybrid. Our transition to it is going swimmingly well, which is surprising given the supply of materials and supply chain at the moment. And we're looking to bring on another 7 in the next little while. We need to upgrade the electric car charging, and we wish to do the front as well and put a couple of chargers out there. Whilst we'll only have 2 chargers up front at the beginning, we're going to put enough wiring in to do the whole lot if one day we need to. So I think the paper speaks for itself. Someone might ask, which would be fair, as to when you were planning to buy all these electric cars, how come you didn't plan to do the chargers? Excellent question. This just got ahead of me. And I apologise for that. It's essentially about $8,000 a year, $80,000 capital depreciate over property.
Got to lead the charge.
Thank you, Phil. And it certainly aligns with our internal NRC climate change strategy, doesn't it, Amy? And there is the money available for the electric charging, as it will be depreciated. So I'm happy to support. Any questions, comments? Yes, Jack.
I just want a brief question, Phil. We're going to need that. I think it's fantastic that have charging points at the back of the building and out in the business car park. That seems a great message. It's a great idea. You've also said you need the space in behind Food for Life. Does that mean the Domino's people are going to have to constrain themselves a bit? Because I noticed they park over the footpath already.
Yeah, so it's the relationship with Domino's, wanes a little bit. The reality is they actually own that passageway, so they own the land, so they allow us to cross over there,
Oh, I
across there. In return, we don't grumble too much when their customers park in our property weekends. So it's kind of a loose arrangement we've got, and yeah, it's just the way that it is. So I guess one day when I come with a paper to buy the Domino's building, we'll all.
Not you.
Thank you. Question of Phil, just regarding maintenance of vehicles and whether you consider going fully electric so that there's no diesel, petrol motors that have to be serviced, just to might be more expensive than the investment, the initial investment, but long term maybe cheaper. Are you doing all that, the cost benefits?
Yes, so we've got a pretty good program lined up that Glenn and colleague have got lined up. And what they're essentially looking at is just technology is going to take over, and it's just not quite there yet. So we've got our sort of crossovers, which can do a lot of the hefty work that we do with just four-wheel drive, but we're still not at a point where we can go fully electric, because some of the pickups, you know, just are on terrain which can't be electric. We have got a number of cars out the back though that are fully electric. So we're sort of at that stage at the moment. We've got fully electric, hybrid, and then still diesel. And it's not so much a will or even a cost issue. It's more the technology coming through that we're waiting on. Does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So it's top of mind, but we're just not quite, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, we'll take, just
Just a comment, you know, given our experience that we're building up in this sort of this space of technology, you know, in terms of maybe sharing it with the TMAC, you know, because you know, I can see applications of this type, you know, maybe at Marais and remote schools where you've got, you know, communities that are greatly impacted by the huge hikes in fuel costs. You know, I'm not sure if this, you know, this array of solar panels can, you know, just straight charge vehicles, you know, because like distant Marais and schools, you know, could have a similar setup where family can just rock up to their Marais and plug in and get to town. So.
Oh, look, absolutely. I mean, we're learning, and as it happens, these vehicles are just going to use our solar generation so much more efficiently. So, you know, it's good when we do it. I mean, I'm not sure how you run it, you know, in terms of grants or you know, being a leader in that.
Well, even just showing what the systems, you know, how they're built, you know, what the capital costs are, you know, because Marais could probably lead the fundraising and tap into funding from Foundation or whoever themselves. But it's just bridging that knowledge gap of like what the opportunities are.
so you're talking a presentation to TMAC potentially?
Oh, I think so, yeah, would be really good.
Okay. All right, we'll take that on board. All right, any nothing further, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour of recommendations 1 to 5?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Phil. 7.7, minor amendment to regional pest plan on page 228. Recommendations are there. 3 recommendations.
Happy to move.
Thank you, Jack. Second to Amy. Any question, or Don, did you want to speak to this? Fairly straightforward.
Straightforward. The act provides for a minor addition without public consultation, and we're just using that that statute to do this to make sure our rules are really lawful.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Jack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a big fan of the Biosecurity Act, and this is one of the reasons it allows us to make minor changes for common sense without impacting on the rights or the responsibilities of anyone else. I've got 2 tiny questions. One, what are other regional councils doing? I assume they're doing similar. And secondly, probably an unfair question, do we know anything about them hybridizing? Because you know that one of them will hybridize goldfish, so I'm just worried about the impacts of, if both species are here, it looks likely that we may end up with a little bit more hybrid bigger than they.
Yes, kia ora, Jack. Yes, we're not sure whether how widespread the European koi carp are in New Zealand. MPI have kept that species on their register. At this point, all of the koi that have been tested
have been Asian koi carps. So the risks, I think, of hybridization hopefully are low, but it is a possibility, as koi will hybridize even with other carp like goldfish.
Thank you.
And regional councils, other regional councils are doing similar.
They're doing similar work. It's probably the biggest change will be with Department of Conservation having to charge, because they are really a large regulator in that space.
Yeah, the regional councils are changing their, amending theirs as well. Yeah. Okay, nothing further. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. 7.8 NRC Te Tiriti Organisation Review, aka Te Tiriti Health Check, on page 232. So we move to supplementary item. So we have just two recommendations. Thanks, Chris. There, do I have a mover and seconder, please? Mover Marty, seconded Joss. Oriel, would you like to speak to this at all? A really good initiative and a really enlightening one, and something that the next council can fully take on board, is the hope and idea.
I'm not sure if Paul, Beverly and Ty have made it.
The microphone too, Oriel.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I don't need to use this thing.
Yes,
I do.
Live stream. Yeah.
Kia ora. Look, it's really a great representation of the work from Taiki. You'll see at the end of the report, there's been some measures, so that's good as well too for the incoming council, you know, from building towards confident using the framework, and also from areas from unfamiliar to comfortable. So that, I think, through you, the chair's really excellent way now for an approach of us having performance measures against a taiki and those actions for the work that we need to do. It's also a great commentary as well too for the health check around what's working. So I just want to acknowledge that there was some really strong feedback that council has done some excellent work in understanding Te Tiriti. There's also been some recommendations around testing the legislation to see how further council can encourage partnership with iwi and hapu. The other part of this report, I think, which is important, is it gives a reflection of te tai tukero. So even though outside of the scope was he whakaputanga, you know, what came through from TTMAC was you can't have a tiriti health check without recognising, acknowledging he whakaputanga in terms of what learning council needs to undertake and embark upon, but the uniqueness of iwi and hapu and the work we need to do. There's also some recommendations about being much clearer who we engage with. We've done our best that we can in terms of who central government has identified, but also through our partnership with TTMAC and the work we're doing with iwi and hapu. I think that's important. Mostly we know there's a lot of work to do, but the council has got us to a place now, any new council coming in now has a very strong direction in terms of the actions to take through the LTP, but secondly, the ongoing performance and how we go from unfamiliar to comfortable through to confident in terms of the benchmarks. Penny, so I think today, given it's the last formal meeting, fitting, we finished with the Tiriti Health Check, the Tiriti Organisational Review. Also a reminder that Paul, Beverly, Tai Ahu, they're all experienced in treaty settlements, also experienced in what it is to have tiriti partnerships with council, and very much their acknowledgement, both of iwi and hapu and the hard work that they've had in terms of sitting at the table, but also of council around quite a leading edge piece of work. So I want to finish on that and recognise for the incoming council and for staff and ELT, we have to think about now what actions relate to Taiki, our implementation plan, but also what other actions now have come out of the recommendations. And there are some other ones there that we'll have to pick through and work through with the new council and TTMAC. So I just want to say, Penny, thank you. We got it in there in the nick of time. So nō reira, tēnā koe. Any questions, happy to answer, but the recommendation is for you to receive the report and for our incoming see if there's anything that we need to grammatically or minor, take an opportunity. I feel like this is always going to be a document in draft or growing or evolving. So I recognise that too. It's not a simple report that will just sit on the shelf now. We have to take it away and do some work. So kia ora, Penny.
Thank you, Oriel. Good words there. Yeah, I think we've got the strategy now with Taiki. We've got the annual TTBT health check, which covers operational as well as governance. So really positive way forward. And thank you to you for all the great work that you and your team have done, as well as the rest of NRC staff, and of course under Malcolm's leadership. So very good initiative from our long-term plan, and going forward it will be very, very positive for Northland. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor.
Any comments from you, Marty? As
Well,
co-chair?
just how pleased I was with the whole of this town, the whole of the Te Tiriti health check, and that we were given the tick from Buttle Finley and Fire Legal, who are experienced right throughout the country, and gave us, was so complimentary, but also in depth, and a really constructive and helpful document that can be referred to again and again. It was good to see the summary assessment of the 6 priorities on page 32. Of this confident, and comfortable. And that's really an endorsement by the non-elected members of TTMAC, which shows that we are on the right track. And it's a journey, and it always will be. It's not getting to the top of Everest, it goes over the hill as well. So it's just progressive, and I'm pleased at how we have progressed really rapidly in the last 6 months. That we have got the Taiki across the line, and really are implementing the wishes of the TTMAC members, and I'm sure that Peter as co-chair will be absolutely rapt that he'll be able to say to his members, anybody asks him when he's asked what did you achieve, then he will be able to say I've been part of a team that's achieved a heck of a lot.
Thank you, Marty, and just I know that Malcolm's said right throughout his tenure that we work with everyone and anyone. So this is what this is about. There's no room for complacency, however, and one of the recommendations I think covered capacity and capability of our TTBT partners. That's something that the next council will definitely have to address. That's it from me. Anything further? Yes, Jack.
I'd just like to say, I think of all the things we've done this term, this is as big as anything. In terms of us being courageous enough, the word that Malcolm has used, to actually have those honest conversations, because it takes a fair bit of courage to do. And I think we should all feel good about it, because I know this is just the start of the journey. This isn't the journey, but it's like the journey to becoming a more inclusive society, the journey to becoming more kinder and a lot more democratic. So I feel really, really good about this. I think it's been incredibly well managed. I mean, it's been incredibly well led by Penny and Malcolm and Marty. But we've had some incredible work by Buttle Finley and Fire Legal. I mean, these people are pretty amazing. But I'd really like to thank the TMAC and MTEC for their 2 or 3 goes at refining even this person, not the whole Takia, but just this as well. Because this is actually the first grunty step after Takia, isn't it? So yeah, I think we should feel pretty good about it. I'd really like to congratulate Oriel, Kim, Robert, and Arama for their work on it as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Yes, Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to take the opportunity to acknowledge everyone's contribution to this. It's been a really important piece of work, and well done to everyone, their commitment. At the same time, I just want to place on record that I agree with Councillor Robinson. This is the beginning of a journey. This is the first step. And I think it's really important to keep the momentum going and encourage the next council to really pick this up and get going with the second year assessment as soon as possible. I think this report identifies a number of areas that require further sort of teasing out and the development of policy and strategy around them. So we just encourage that we continue on this journey with vigor.
Thank you, Malcolm. There's nothing else. We'll go to the vote. All those in favour of recommendations 1 and 2? Aye. Against? Carried. Moving on to operational reports. Items 8, 8.1, the Chair's report to Council. I'll move that it be accepted. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Rick. Any questions or comments? Yes,
Film
Joss.
Commission, what was that?
Oh, sorry, I'll go to Joss, please.
Just the minor typo. Mayor Smith and KDC might like to have his name correct. It's Jason, not Jake.
Oh, he's known as Jake as well.
Oh,
but-
okay.
Yeah,
Well, that's true, he
yeah,
is.
but he
I
is
just
Jason.
Would be
Yeah.
more appropriate,
Yes.
to be Jason and then.
Yes, and I'm not quite sure which is the right one until you talk to. So, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it's me, Jason. Surely correct. Thank you, Joss. Jack.
Film Commission, anything of import?
That was a fledgling conversation with a group, the New Zealand Film Commission, as well as some American contingent looking to make a movie in Te Tokoro. And so they were just wanting to make us aware and make contact. So staff
Yep, thank you.
been passed on. So pretty exciting actually, and could be quite neat for either Whangarei or Mid-North. Nothing further. All those in favour? Against? Passed. 8.2, Chief Executive's report to Council. Could I have a move and seconder, please? Thank you, Joss. Seconder, Rick. Thank you. Did you want to make some commentary first, Malcolm?
Chair, thanks for the opportunity. Really, I've put my thoughts down in the valedictory, so I don't wish to read that out, but again, just would reflect on the immense pride that I have in terms of the work that has been delivered by the staff, and my thanks to you as elected members for the support we've had throughout this triennium, in allowing us to do some things that haven't been quite the run of the mill, and that's allowed us to deliver some services and infrastructure to the region that I think will stand the region in good stead in future years.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely forward thinking and foresight in a lot of what you've guided us and helped us to achieve. Thank you, Malcolm. Yeah. Nothing further. Any questions? No. Another in-depth report, and I'm sure that they will continue in some shape or form. Jono, you'll put your own mark on it, and all strength for you to do that. Okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 8.3, residents survey results to year end 30th of June 2022, page 284. Page there. Any recommendations? Are there just the one? It's just the one that we received the report. Could I have a move and seconder, please? Moved Amy, seconded Rick, thank you. Kyla, did you want to speak to this one? No, just you for question. Yeah. A new way of doing things this time. We have workshopped this, so but if there are any further questions or comments. No, and an improved result, you would say? Yes, very much so. So I think the new way of doing it incrementally over the year is a good idea, and will give us better results that we can build on and incorporate into best practice. So there's nothing more.
Well, I suppose I've got one question, just I think it is on page 286, just the stars, thinking about the NRC overall, how do you feel about us stars, and just not quite as descriptive as the following graph with the overall reputation of from very poor to excellent. Because it hasn't got a key to the side of it. But apart from that, not pretty good. Thank you.
I think some of the comments about relate to people's opinion about low performance might relate to the fact they don't know exactly what we do. And some of them might relate to, well, not doing a very good job of controlling wandering dogs or consenting for buildings and stuff like that. So you've always got to take those sort of overall scores with a bucket of salt. One thing that did stick out to me a little bit is that, again, people would like us to communicate more effectively with them. I know it's a sort of a airy-fairy, sort of grab bag of a question, but it's something I think we may have to address and find another way to communicate with people. I know our Facebook page is pretty damn good. Not everybody likes Facebook. I don't know. I don't have an answer to it. Yeah, how we communicate outwards and how we receive stuff back. I think we probably do a fairly good job of getting comments back in, but I'm not sure how well we communicate with what we do.
Yeah.
Same old thing.
I think it's an ongoing issue, and it is something that comes up time and time again. And
Yeah.
it's a two-way street, of course, but if we can get out there how people can tap into our communication rather than trying to go out and communicate with them a bit more.
Targeted.
Something to work on. And I know the staff are always working on that. Yeah. Okay, all those in favour of receiving that report? Against?
Actually, I suppose one way of doing it, if you get one of those jammers that you can jam all channels all at the same time and put out an announcement from NRC. It just is so many different targets on it.
While we're on the subject, I think the council needs to again look at the matter of striking and collecting its own rates. You go around the end of the week, it's still the confusion around which council does what could be solved so easily with a clear separation of what we do going out with our rates collection notice.
There's still work going on that, isn't there, Bruce?
Councillors leaving can't laugh.
Okay, we'll carry on. Thank you for those comments, Justin. And it is something that we can continue to look at. 8.4, Chief Executive Officer's Key Performance Indicators Final Report. So this is another one from Kyla. Mover and seconder, please. Thank you, Joss. Seconded, Rick. Any comments from you, Malcolm?
Chair, no, not in addition to the comment that I made earlier. I think we've got to acknowledge that we didn't quite get to the level of service delivery that we had hoped for this financial year. But again, given the circumstances, I think the staff have done an awesome job to be able to deliver substantially more than what we delivered the previous year. And that in itself, I think, doesn't necessarily come through when you just reflect on the cold data as we do in this report.
Yeah, I think the COVID impact does need to be emphasised, and also, as you say, the fact that we still delivered on most, and if where we didn't, it was pretty close on most of those as well. So I think it's under the circumstances, you did exceptionally well.
Just a question of that then. If the deadline were 2 to 3 months later, would all of those been achieved? The environmental services where it wasn't achieved because of timeliness or because of COVID or whatever, but have they been achieved now that given time, it would have looked a lot more glowing than it does actually on paper now?
Yeah, Chair, I'm not sure I can give an answer over 2 or 3 months. I think what we were very careful to do in the financial statements is to make sure that the money that was allocated to the functions that weren't completed was set aside so it's available. Much of it is dependent on the skills that we're able to attract to the organisation as well, and whether we'd achieve those in a few months is difficult to say. But at the end of the day, I'm confident that those will ultimately be delivered. That said, at the same time, the clock starts on the 1st of July every year anyway. So I think we were more than likely just a little bit optimistic in terms of what we could achieve. I mean, COVID was an important element, but I think the bigger element was the very rapid changing labour market and the fact that prior to this financial year, we'd always essentially been able to attract more resource out of the market. And this year, for the first time, we've truly got to a point that we've exhausted the resource that's out there. And that means, and I've been speaking to the team about that, I mean, going forward, unless the change in immigration settings that the government has recently announced radically change the settings in the labour market again, I think it's an ongoing operational requirement that will need to change, that we can't make the assumption that there will always just be additional resource as we expand and want to deliver more. So we're going to have to find alternative ways of doing it, to just assuming that there's another person out there that we can attract.
Yeah, so there's some good commentary in the background section, which I would encourage everyone to read. And just one point I'd make is that even though our annual operating revenue increased from 30 million to 73 million, that's not all rates. We have rates is 35 mil, something like that, contributing to the 73 at the moment. So yeah, in case people were getting worried. But yeah, that immigration is an issue, as well as the poaching of central government of our employees. Anything further, team?
Just in the government poaching our team, poaching from all the other teams, where do they go after central government? If they got more people in the room doing the same amount of work, and then driving the regions to do more?
Pretty much. That's how it appears. So well done, everyone. Even though we didn't get them all, we came very close, and they'll always have an element of aspirality. Aspiration. Okay, all those in favour of receiving the report? Against? Carried. Righty-ho, moving on to receipt of committee minutes and working party group updates. 9.1, thank you, Rick. Receipt of committee minutes and a seconder for that. Thanks, Colin. Page 323, I'll just make sure I get the right years. So we have Kaipara Moana Joint Committee. Amy or Joss, have you got any comments on that? It's all fairly self-explanatory.
Can I make one comment, Penny, given I was kind of leading that committee and it's been a substantial chunk of work over the course of this term. I suppose the thing that doesn't come across in the minutes of the meetings is just the significant amount of work and impact that is being generated by the project that will be felt right throughout Te Whakatākara. And I think that it can't be underestimated what's being set up through this whole project, because there are so many learnings and so many things that can be replicated or that we can bring out of that across all of the region. And so at the end of the day, I think its impact is monumental and cannot be underestimated. So, I mean, for me, it's been an absolute privilege to be involved in that process, just that whole structure of the committee and that partnership approach to doing things. It's been a huge learning curve, but just an absolute honour to be involved in. And I think, you know, for me to personally to finish my career on that one piece of work alone is a good way to go out. You know, it's just phenomenal. So can't be underestimated what's coming out through that work, and I really look forward to seeing, you know, how that comes through in the rest of Northland, and what happens, you know, in the future for that. So yeah, really cool and great to have been part of. So thank you for nominating me and putting me forward as part of it. I was cussing you there for a while, but yeah, it has been an absolutely wonderful piece of work.
Thank you, Joss. Amy?
Nothing really on the minutes themselves, but I guess sort of similar to Joss, I wanted to give some credit to Malcolm for the work he did to you know, for many years working towards the business case, and then, you know, the process that's come from that. And yeah, it's just been a real privilege to be part of that. And we had our last hui, was it last week? And yeah, just feel like it's really in a good place now, that whatever happens in terms of succession around elected members, that the team are going to continue to work really well, and been a privilege to have that chance to work in a joint committee in this space. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, I certainly agree with what both you and Joss have said. And just to add that a couple of things, that it is looking very likely that the money's going to be able to now be spread over 10 years instead of the 6. And there was one other thing, but it's really going to hit its straps next year. It's had a lot of good foundation work done. It's got a really good crew on board with an excellent Pototaki. So looking forward to seeing especially being in my area, what happens next, and the impact that it's going to make, as well as the template that it's going to provide. Marty, you had a question?
Yeah, just a question of the three of you. I suppose I've sort of always imagined it as being the Northern Wairoa going into the Kaipara, and don't hear about much about South Head or South Kaipara. And just wondering how that relationship has gone as to a building relationship with Unitary Authority, with Auckland, and
yes,
from down south.
Yeah, so we've had 2 councillors and 1 community board. Local board member. So it's worked very well, and unfortunately COVID came along, and so we weren't able to meet face to face. So the relationship building has still been productive, but I think moving into the next triennium, the intention is to have a lot more face to face meetings, so that relationship will be even stronger. But certainly the 2 councillors and the local board member were very good to work with. Yeah, we're all on the same page on that committee, so yeah, it's not hard.
Yeah, the environment's a uniting factor. Having fun, Josh.
Amazing. Okay, no further questions. We'll move on to Joint Climate Change Adaptation Committee. Amy.
Thank you. Yeah, we had the formal part of our meeting was very brief. This was our yeah, just a short meeting followed by quite an extensive workshop session. And so yeah, in terms of the minutes, there's not too much there. I guess I'll just speak a little bit to what we were workshopping, basically sort of trying to come together for the whole of Northland, all the councils and those tangata whenua representatives, to discuss just how we can optimise governance in this space, and also that challenging question around climate change adaptation versus mitigation, and where the lines sit for local government and what is needed in terms of regional leadership. So we had a really good workshop session which was facilitated, so everyone could really just share their ideas, and I understand that's being written up and will be presented in the new triennium to the respective councils. And yeah, so I guess we'll just wait and see where that sits. But yeah, felt really good about, again, where we've left that with the strategies signed off collectively. We know that in this little phase of change that we're going through now, the staff are still busily working away, making progress on the things that we're committed to. So it was a good meeting, and yeah, just look forward to seeing how it all progresses in the next training.
Thank you, Amy. Any questions, Amy? No.
Oh, did you, sorry, one question. Did you get the chance to discuss any likely further makeup of that committee, or any further changes in how it's structured regionally?
The key thing we talked about in terms of structure of the committee was probably the need to have 2 tangata whenua members per council, because that concept around the proxy not really working.
Yeah.
And so just the idea that to get that continuity of input and the ability to have a bit more breadth in the room. But that was just one of the things that was put forward in the discussion.
People were quite keen on that, weren't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Civil Defence Emergency Management Group.
Right, so look, I encourage you all to, if you've all got it in your LinkedIn can, to read the reports, because we accept them there, but they're not really discussed. So the Northern Civil Defence response to the two major events that was discussed and commented on, and was very supportive of it. So please have a look at that. And obviously tsunami sirens, you would have all heard them, hopefully, on Sunday. Should have. And remembering that when people ask questions, they are louder and bigger, but there won't be as many. So, and they do talk to you, remember? So these ones talk to you. So please, answer those questions. Everybody seems to always ask about tsunami sirens. And of course, not mentioned in the minutes is that Mayor Mai has done 12 years on the civil defence. So we thank her, and she's obviously finishing. So she's done 3, I think. Toss would pick me up on that. 3 as chair in the beginning, and then Toss took over. So and thank you to Toss for his 10 years as well on civil defence. He's finishing as well. So thank you for that, because he's been my alternate member in the last 3 years. Okay, so that's not covered in the minutes. So thank you, and also acknowledging that Victoria will be moving on.
Thank you, Rick. And yes, thank you, Victoria, for all the great work that you have done. So we have a move and seconded for 9.1. So we need to all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. And 9.2, working party updates and chairperson's briefings. We'll go to move and seconded for those briefings, please. Thank you, Rick, Justin and Amy. Land and water. Justin.
Yeah, just want to acknowledge our staff, our team was an enjoyable last meeting, and yes, still a huge amount of work to do in the space, obviously around sediment. But I think organisations got a good handle on all the issues, and certainly projects like the Kaipamwana, give me great hope for the future. How we might draw in that level of financial resource to restore the catchments in the north. So yeah, I'm happy to take any questions from the comments there.
All right. Okay. Biodiversity and biosecurity. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Look, I won't take up too much time. I'd just like to record our gratitude to MPI for all the assistance we've had from them over the last 2 years. It's been very impressive, and I think reflects well on the relationship that our manager and his staff have built up with MPI, and also some credit to MPI for realising that regional councils are the very best delivery mechanism for national projects. It's something they've never really realised in the past, and also that they have become more forward thinking. And secondly, we all have to applaud the new national pest management plan for Curry Dieback. I'm going down on Friday, so sorry, I'll miss your last, unless I get back in time. On Friday, I'm going down to celebrate that at Arataki. And there's just a little bit of news about this. There's still a bit of a risk around the EPA and their investigation into the lakes incident. I'm confident that will come up okay, but the EPA have really put us under the microscope. So I think it'll be drawn out for a wee while yet.
What's that for, Jim?
Sorry?
Is that for the overspray or what?
Yeah, a little bit overspray on lake. Was it? Can't remember the name. Yeah. So storm a teacup, in my view. But and the recovery's been excellent. So, but anyway, I just thought I'd give you a heads up on that and not to be alarmed by it. Thank you.
Questions for Jack? And sorry, I skipped over Titi Mac.
The elephant in the room.
Marty.
It's all in front of you. Yeah, it's well, you can see how much is in front of us there from TMAC, so you can see how much work that MTAG and WAG and everybody are under. Hopefully they'll be well resourced in the next triennium to be able to just take that workload off them. It's like the tsunami coming over them. So yeah, look after them, John. Kia ora.
Thanks, Marty. Questions, Marty? Right, and lastly, the climate change, Amy.
Thank you. So we had a really interesting update from the Climate Change Commission, and really great to see a good relationship being maintained, an opportunity we have with a staff member who has moved to that role. So yeah, quite an insightful and interesting conversation. We then looked at the somewhat overwhelming government reforms and what that looks like, which is all a bit of a moving feast. And then, yeah, again, looking at our strategy and understanding with that commitment we've made to those actions, how we're going to implement and monitor our progress with those. So some really important work being done by staff. Yeah, and I guess I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everybody. Thank you, Victoria. We're very sorry that you're not sticking around, but really have appreciated what you've brought, you know, while this has been sitting with you, and just feel really lucky that at this point now we have some really highly qualified and dedicated staff working in this space, and they are, you know, even at a national level, some of our staff are really leading here, so it's quite fantastic for NRC and for Northland. And also just wanted to acknowledge all of the councillors because this has been a bit of a barrow for me to push over the last 3 years, and I've really appreciated everybody's willingness to listen and let me repeat myself several times sometimes. And overall, I think we've actually achieved a lot. There's a lot more to do, but yeah, looking forward to the next training and the next council. They'll be starting from a really strong point of knowing what needs to be done, and they just have to get on with the implementation. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Amy. All those in favour of accepting those reports? Against, carried. Okay, so just before we move into business with the public excluded, I'd just like to say a few words, and then I'll hand on to Malcolm to say a few as well. So I jotted down some thoughts this morning that have been in my head for a wee while now. And just to make a few comments, as this is our last meeting for the triennium, and it's been a very busy one, and it's been disruptive, and COVID's come along and had us do things differently, and it's actually really nice over the last week or so to have had the time to reflect on all that we have achieved, and of course Malcolm's tenure and the positive difference that that's made. So it's certainly been a real pleasure, I think, for all of us as councillors and myself as chair to work with Malcolm, ELT, and the rest of the staff, including our advisors, Stuart. We have got a new way of working now. We are more flexible, and our staff wellbeing is all the better for it. And as councillors, I'd like to thank, as chair, I'd like to thank all councillors for making it easy to adopt to that new way of working. There's been a lot of hard work over the last 3 years, and also for some councillors it's been 6 years. So thank you to all of that mihi that's gone on. The working parties and the subcommittees, I think on the whole, have worked particularly well, especially some of the newer working parties that we didn't have in the last triennium. Professional, patient and flexible are words that come to mind for me over that COVID period. So well done, everyone. I think we've got a very proficient, prudent and aspirational long-term plan in place, and we are sticking to it as much as we can, and it's not for the want of not wanting to do the work. I would like to recognise the 3 councillors that are not standing for re-election, Colin, Terry and Joss. Thank you for all of your guidance and hard work over the triennium, and I wish you all the best in your new endeavours, and hopefully we will see you around and hear about you even. As you know, we've talked about, we will be welcoming 3 new Maori councillors next term, which I am sure will add value to our council table, and I will look with interest as to how that goes, as it will be positive for Northland. And very pleased that the other 3 councils in the north will be doing exactly the same thing, as will a total of 32 around the country. So Malcolm, we've said a lot to you over the last 2 weeks, and I know that it is getting a little bit overwhelming, but just as it is your last council meeting as CEO, not necessarily your last council meeting, we will see. Thank you again for your huge and extremely positive effect that you've had, not just on NRC, but on Northland and the wider regional sector, LGNZ. You've really demonstrated leadership and skill and talent that people can have learned from and can take away and do better for themselves. I think it is, as I say, only mā te wā, Malcolm, and perhaps to the other councillors that are leaving as well. But I do wish the rest of council all the very best in the next wee while. But to Jono all, to Jono as well, I should say, welcome to you. It's been a much anticipated and I'm sure anxious time for us all, waiting, but it's finally here all but 2 days. And I would also like to welcome the new council that is elected in the new triennium. So to you, Jono, and the new council, I wish you every success. Over to you, Malcolm.
Thank you, Chair. I've actually never had to stand to address council before, but I really wanted to stand to acknowledge you, Chair. I had the opportunity this morning to speak to the broader council and provide my thanks for the way in which we've been able to work together. But I wanted to publicly in this forum acknowledge the exceptional leadership that you've provided over the last 3 years, and particularly the quiet manner in which you just pulled us together as a team and kept us together in times. I mean, it's been an exceptional ability to allow us to have robust debates, to disagree with each other around this council table, and yet maintain the unity so that when we walk out of this room, we are absolutely of one voice. And that is due to your exceptional ability of being able to just see how each of us is going and pick up the little things and have a quiet chat from time to time where needed. And so it's been an absolute pleasure to serve under you, Chair. Your contribution to this council and the unity and the collaboration of this council cannot be overstated. So I wanted to acknowledge that. I also just wanted to have a quick comment to Jono, because when I was addressing the staff this morning, the one thing I forgot to say in sort of haste to get to council in time was that it is such a comfort to be able to hand over to a solid pair of hands. And as well, it's not, I know that it's not only one pair of hands. It's an entire team that is absolutely solid, absolutely committed to the vision of serving Northland. And that is fantastic and a real comfort to me as being able to allow me to sort of go into retirement, you know, and feel comfortable in letting go. So, John, I wish you well. I wish you and your whole team well. There's a big job to do, but I know that you're up to the task. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Malcolm. Yep, and as always, it's a team effort. So, all kudos to everyone involved in these last 3 years. Thank you. So, I'll now move that we.
Sorry, before closing that, just because I think it's deserving of public recognition of your leadership as a councillor, and I'll put a dollar to a donut that all councillors would agree with me, Penny, that you really have shown great leadership. You've had real attention for detail. You've been receptive. You've been attentive. I've written a few words here: gentle but effective leadership through a turbulent triennium. You've always been available, and thank you very much for your leadership.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. Thanks, Mark. Okay, it's all getting a little bit overwhelming, so we'll move into public. Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you. Right, seconded, Amy. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you to everyone on live stream. We will bid you a farewell.